Okay, so today we're diving deep into the world of stability testing and how it determines shelf life.
Especially for these, sensitive compounds, like
Yeah.
those derived from plants or fungi.
Exactly. So we're talking cannabinoids,
Right.
psychedelic metabolites,
Hmm.
all those molecules that can have really powerful effects.
Yeah.
But they can also be,
Temperamental.
yes, a little temperamental, you could say that.
For sure.
So you want to be sure that what's on the label is actually what's in the product
Absolutely.
and that it's going to stay safe and effective over time.
Yeah, and that's where the ICHQ1 guidelines come in.
Ah, yes, the ICHQ1 guidelines.
Yeah.
Those are kind of like the gold standard
They are. They are.
in the pharmaceutical world, right?
Yeah, think of them as like the rule book for pharmaceutical quality, safety, and efficacy.
And even though they might not officially apply to all botanicals and psychedelics yet,
Right.
the principles are still really relevant,
Absolutely.
wouldn't you say?
It's all about applying that same rigor and knowledge to protect consumers,
Yes.
especially with these newer compounds where we're still learning about their long-term behavior.
Because even if something isn't technically classified as a drug yet,
Right.
it's still going into someone's body.
Exactly.
And they deserve to know that it's been thoroughly tested,
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to remain stable,
Yeah,
consistent over time.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about stability testing itself.
Okay.
There are two main approaches, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Real-time and accelerated.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about these two approaches.
Okay, so real-time testing is pretty much as it sounds.
Okay.
We store the product under normal conditions, like you would have at home.
Right, like room temperature, regular humidity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we check it periodically to see how it's holding up.
So it's kind of like watching a plant grow,
Right.
right?
Yeah, precisely.
Let's just sort of observe it over time
Yeah.
and see how it changes. But as you might imagine, that can take a long time,
It can.
especially if you're aiming for a shelf life of a year or more.
Exactly. Yeah, it gives you the most accurate picture of how a product degrades naturally.
Right.
But it's not always the most practical in terms of time and resources.
Right. I mean, you can't wait 2 years to release a product.
Exactly.
So you got to do something else.
Yeah.
So accelerated testing, then,
Yeah.
that's where you're really trying to speed things up.
Exactly. So accelerated testing, we expose the product to higher temperatures
Okay.
and humidity
To speed up that degradation.
to speed up the degradation. Exactly.
So you're essentially simulating like a year's worth of degradation
Yeah,
in a much shorter time frame.
exactly.
But then I imagine you have to do a lot of correlation, right,
yes,
between those two
you have
to make sure that what you're seeing in the accelerated version
right
is actually reflective of what's going to happen
under normal conditions. Yeah,
under normal conditions.
it's crucial.
Yeah. So it's kind of like comparing notes between your slow and steady method
Hmm.
and your speed racer method,
Yeah, exactly.
just to make sure you're getting a consistent picture.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about when things get even more complicated.
Yeah.
When you have products that have multiple active compounds.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just about a single ingredient anymore.
Yeah.
It's like juggling, right?
Yeah. It's like a whole ecosystem.
Yeah, like a whole ecosystem. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So like with a blend of different cannabinoids
Mm-hmm.
or a whole spectrum of fungal metabolites,
Yeah.
each component could degrade at its own rate.
Absolutely.
And they could even influence each other.
Right. Yeah.
Stability, right?
Exciting.
So it's like a delicate dance
It is.
between all these molecules,
It is.
each with its own little rhythm.
It's a very complex system.
It's super complex.
It is.
So for example, THC, everyone knows THC.
Right.
That might degrade faster in the presence of certain terpenes. It can, yeah.
And terpenes are supposed to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, they're the aromatic compounds that give cannabis its unique smell and flavor.
Okay.
But they can also influence the stability of other compounds.
So they could actually speed up the degradation of the THC,
Potentially, yeah.
which seems counterintuitive.
It does, it does.
Because you think terpenes, they're enhancing the experience,
Yeah.
making it better,
Yeah,
but they could also be contributing to it breaking down faster.
exactly. And then you have fungal metabolites, which
Mhm.
can sometimes become more potent over time.
Oh, so it's not always about things losing potency.
No.
It could actually be the opposite.
They can become more potent as they break down into different compounds.
So then the shelf life is even more critical.
It is, yeah. This
Yeah.
really highlights the need for careful analysis of both the individual components
Okay.
and the overall formulation.
You've got to look at the whole picture.
You have to, you need to understand how each piece of the puzzle is behaving
Right.
and how they all fit together. It's like a multi-dimensional jigsaw puzzle.
It is, yeah.
So it seems like labeling and consumer safety
Mm-hmm.
are really important here.
They are paramount.
Because imagine buying a product that says it has a certain potency
Right.
or a certain shelf life,
Yeah.
and then it turns out that that's not accurate
Exactly.
because things have degraded or interacted in ways that you didn't anticipate.
Right. And that could be incredibly frustrating for the consumer.
Frustrating and dangerous.
Right. And dangerous, absolutely.
So consumers deserve to know exactly what they're getting
They do.
and how long it's going to last
And how long they can expect it to remain stable and effective.
and how long it's going to be safe.
Exactly. Yeah. Accurate labeling is essential.
Right.
Not just for transparency, but for safety.
Especially with these newer, more sensitive compounds.
Yeah, especially for the...
Where we're still learning about their long-term behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's all about building trust, isn't it?
It is. It is.
With consumers
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that they can make informed decisions
Absolutely.
about the products that they're using.
Informed decisions, yes.
So it's not just about following some regulations.
Right.
It's about really ensuring that these products, especially the ones that have these potent effects,
Yeah.
are used safely and responsibly.
Absolutely.
That's really what it's all about.
It's about protecting consumers and empowering them with knowledge.
Well said.
Thank you.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
I feel like we've really laid a foundation
Mm-hmm.
for understanding stability testing and why it's so important.
Yeah, it's a fascinating field, and the more we understand about these compounds,
Right.
the better equipped we'll be to harness their potential safely and responsibly.
And speaking of harnessing potential, I know one of the sources that we looked at mentioned some really advanced analytical techniques that could potentially predict shelf life
Right.
even more accurately.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about like personalized shelf life
Oh.
based on storage conditions.
Yeah.
Or individual user profiles.
Absolutely. It's an area of active research.
Wow.
Yeah. The more we understand about these degradation pathways
Right.
and factors that influence them, the better we can tailor products to specific needs
That's incredible.
and ensure their safety and efficacy over time.
So that's like a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
It is. Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to explore that another time.
Absolutely.
But for now, I think we've given our listeners a really solid foundation
I hope so.
for understanding why this matters.
Yeah.
Stability testing.
It's the unsung hero of the botanical and psychedelic world.
It really is.
It's the behind-the-scenes science that ensures the products you're using are safe, effective, and consistent over time.
It's the foundation upon which trust and transparency are built.
Absolutely.
And it plays a vital role in unlocking the potential of these powerful compounds.
For the benefit of everyone.
Well said. So until next time, keep those brains buzzing,
Yes.
and we'll see you back here for part 2 of our deep dive
Looking forward to it.
into this fascinating world of stability testing.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into stability testing and shelf life determination.
It's great to be back. And, you know, as we were wrapping up part 1, I was really struck by the complexity of it all, especially when you're dealing with multiple active compounds. Like, how do you even begin to...
It adds a whole new dimension to the challenge, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to predict the behavior of a whole ecosystem.
Right.
Where each organism's interacting with the others in the environment
Exactly.
in these complex ways.
It's a very complex system.
Yeah, so how do scientists even begin to unravel all the possible interactions
Right.
and degradation pathways in these complex mixtures?
Well, it definitely requires a deep understanding of the chemistry involved.
Okay.
But thankfully, there are some powerful tools and techniques at our disposal.
Okay.
One of the key things we focus on is identifying the specific degradation pathways.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. What exactly do you mean by degradation pathways?
Sure, it's all about understanding how a molecule breaks down over time,
Okay.
what byproducts are formed, and
Right.
what factors influence that process.
So you're really mapping out the journey
Exactly.
of that molecule.
Think of it like tracing the branches of a tree,
Okay.
where the trunk is the original compound,
Okay.
and the branches represent the different ways it can degrade.
I like
So-
that analogy.
Yeah.
So why is it so important to map out these degradation pathways?
Well, for starters, those byproducts could potentially be harmful,
Okay.
even if the original compound was safe.
Oh,
So
interesting.
you could have a perfectly delicious cake
Right.
that goes bad,
Yes.
and suddenly it's not just unappetizing.
Right.
It could actually make you sick.
It could make you sick.
Exactly.
And I bet it's even more crucial
Yeah.
with compounds that are known to be mutagenic.
You're absolutely right.
as one of the sources mentioned.
Mutagenic impurities are a serious concern.
Okay, whoa.
Yeah.
Back up.
Okay.
Mutagenic, what does that even mean?
So mutagenic impurities can cause changes in DNA,
Got it.
which could potentially lead to health problems down the line.
So that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
So scientists need to be extra careful
Absolutely.
when they're working with these compounds.
They need to identify any potentially mutagenic byproducts
Okay.
and ensure that they're either eliminated
Right.
or kept below acceptable levels.
Okay, so it's a whole other level of complexity.
It is.
And risk assessment.
It is, yeah.
So how do scientists tackle this challenge?
Well, thankfully, the ICH guidelines provide a really helpful framework
Okay.
for assessing these risks and developing appropriate control strategies.
Got it.
One strategy that I think is really helpful
Yeah.
is to determine what's called a purge factor.
Okay, purge factor.
Yeah.
What is that?
So essentially, it's a measure of how effectively a manufacturing process removes or reduces a specific impurity. So imagine a compound that degrades into a harmful byproduct.
Right.
The purge factor tells us how much of that byproduct we can eliminate during manufacturing.
So it's kind of like having a filter
Exactly.
water.
It's like a filter for your product.
Yeah, that catches all the bad stuff before it ends up in your glass,
Exactly.
in this case.
So how do you actually calculate this purge factor?
Yeah, how do you even measure that?
It involves carefully measuring the levels of the impurity
Okay.
at different stages of the manufacturing process, and then comparing those levels to see how much is being removed or reduced
At each step.
at each step. Yeah.
So it's meticulous.
It is, but it's essential
Yeah.
to ensure the final product is as pure and as safe as possible.
Wow. It's really incredible level of detail
It is.
that goes into this.
It's a fascinating field to be a part of.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to see how science is being used to protect consumers and unlock the potential of these powerful plant-derived and fungal-derived compounds.
I agree, and I think it's really empowering for consumers to understand these concepts.
Absolutely.
Even at a basic level.
Yeah.
It allows them to make more informed choices about the products that they're using
Absolutely.
and to advocate for greater transparency and safety standards. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Absolutely.
So one thing that stood out to me in the source material was how even tiny molecules
Yeah.
can have huge impacts on our bodies.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. It's like, how can something we can barely even see
Yeah.
have such a significant effect on us?
It all comes down to those intricate interactions
Yeah.
between these molecules and our own biological systems.
So one of our sources goes into a lot of detail
Yeah.
about cannabinoid pharmacology.
It does.
And it talks about how cannabinoids interact with receptors in our brains, in our bodies.
It's like a lock and key system.
Right. The cannabinoid molecule is the key.
Yeah.
And the receptor is the lock.
Exactly.
And when the right key fits into the right lock,
Mm-hmm.
it triggers a specific biological response.
A specific biological response.
I
Exactly.
remember it also talked about all these different signaling pathways
Right.
and how cannabinoids can actually modulate
Yeah.
the release of neurotransmitters.
Yeah, they can.
Those chemical messengers in the brain that control everything from our mood to our appetite.
Exactly. It's not just about cannabinoids, though.
Right.
Psychedelics have their own unique mechanisms of action,
Yeah.
often involving interactions with a specific type of receptor
Okay.
called the 5-HT2A receptor,
Ah, yes, the 5-HT2A receptor.
the so-called psychedelic receptor.
A psychedelic receptor.
If I remember correctly.
Exactly. And this receptor is involved in a wide range of brain functions,
It is.
including perception,
Yeah.
emotion, and cognition.
Exactly. And when psychedelics bind to this receptor,
Yeah.
they can trigger those profound alterations in consciousness.
Right. The hallucinations, the mystical experiences that people talk about.
It's wild,
It's
isn't
like these molecules are tapping into some hidden potential
Yeah.
within our brains, unlocking experiences that we wouldn't normally have access to.
It's a great way to put it, and it's this ability to alter consciousness
Right.
that has made psychedelics such a subject of both fascination and fear
Yeah,
throughout history.
for sure.
But in recent years, there's been a resurgence of interest in psychedelics
Right.
for their potential therapeutic benefits.
For things like depression.
Depression, anxiety, addiction.
Addiction, yeah, it's pretty incredible.
It is, but as with any powerful substance,
Right.
there are risks
Of course.
and challenges
Yeah.
associated with psychedelics.
Even though they come from plants and fungi,
Exactly.
doesn't mean that they're not potent.
They can still have potent effects on our bodies and minds.
And those effects aren't always
predictable
or desirable.
Right.
And that's why the concept of set and setting
Yes.
is so important.
Remind me what that means.
So set refers to the mindset of the person taking the substance.
Okay.
Are they feeling anxious
Okay.
or relaxed?
Right.
Do they have a clear intention for the experience?
Got it.
And setting refers to the environment in which they're taking it.
Okay.
Is it a safe and
Right.
comfortable space?
So it's like if you're going on a roller coaster ride,
Exactly.
if you're excited and feeling adventurous, you're going to have a blast.
You're going to have a blast.
But if you're scared and anxious,
yeah,
it could be terrifying.
it could be a very different experience.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to have
Yeah.
preparation and integration
Absolutely.
when it comes to psychedelic use.
Yeah.
It's not just about taking the substance. It's about understanding the risks, the benefits, having a clear intention.
And creating a safe and supportive environment.
Exactly. And it's also crucial to have experienced guidance,
Right.
like a therapist or a guide
Yes.
who can help navigate those intense experiences
Right.
and integrate the insights gained into daily life.
Well, it's pretty amazing to see these ancient substances
It is.
now being studied
Yeah.
in these controlled clinical settings to treat conditions that have been really hard to manage.
It's a testament to the power of these compounds
Yeah.
and the growing recognition of their potential therapeutic benefits.
It is. It's an exciting time.
It is an exciting time.
But we also need to be cautious.
We do. Research is still ongoing.
Right.
And we need to be cautious about overhyping the potential of psychedelics
Yeah.
before we have a more complete understanding of their long-term effects.
So balance the enthusiasm
Yes,
with scientific rigor
absolutely.
and responsibility.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
from the intricacies of degradation pathways to the importance of set and setting in psychedelic experiences.
And I think it's time to take our exploration to the next level,
I agree.
the molecular level.
Let's put on our molecular goggles
Yeah, let's zoom in.
and zoom in on that intricate dance between these compounds and our biology.
I'm excited about that.
Excellent.
Let's do it.
In part 3, we're going to delve into that fascinating world
Okay.
of receptors, pharmacogenetics, and the future of personalized psychedelic therapy.
Oh, that's going to be a wild ride.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into stability testing and the amazing compounds that come from plants and fungi.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've gone from understanding how these compounds break down over time to exploring their potent effects on our bodies and minds.
Right.
And now we're zooming in on the molecular level
Let's do it.
to really get into the nitty-gritty
All right.
of how these compounds interact with our biology.
Time to put on those molecular goggles.
Yes.
And explore the fascinating world of receptors and pharmacogenetics.
Now, I remember from our previous discussions that one of the key players in this molecular dance is the 5-HT2A receptor.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the main stage
It is.
where a lot of the psychedelic action happens.
You could call it the psychedelic receptor, as some researchers do.
Right, right.
It's a type of serotonin receptor.
Okay.
And serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's involved in a wide range of brain functions.
Okay, so remind me again, what exactly does serotonin do?
Sure. So think of serotonin as a chemical messenger.
Okay.
That helps regulate things like mood, sleep, appetite,
Okay.
and even perception.
So it's like the brain's communication network.
Exactly.
And the 5-HT2A receptor is one of the key hubs in that network.
It is one of the key communication hubs.
So when psychedelics bind to this receptor,
Yeah.
they're essentially like tapping into this communication network
Mm-hmm.
and causing some disruptions,
Yeah.
which then lead to those alterations in consciousness that we've been talking about.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that different psychedelics interact with this receptor in slightly different ways.
Right. So some are more intense. you think.
Exactly. Some are like hitting the gas pedal all the way down.
Yes.
And others are more like a gentle tap.
Okay, so you've got your full agonist.
You got it. So full agonists like LSD and psilocybin,
Right.
they bind to the receptor and fully activate it,
Okay.
leading to those really intense psychedelic experiences.
Those are the ones that really take you for a ride.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
then you mentioned other types of interactions as well.
Right. You have partial agonists.
Partial agonists.
They bind to the receptor, but they only partially activate it.
Okay.
So these compounds might offer therapeutic benefits without triggering those really intense psychedelic effects.
So it's possible to kind of harness the therapeutic potential
It is.
without necessarily sending someone on a full-blown psychedelic trip.
Exactly. And then you have antagonists.
Okay.
They're like hitting the brakes. They bind to the receptor, but they block its activation.
So they're like the opposite.
They're the opposite, yeah. And these could potentially be used to counter the effects of psychedelics or to treat conditions that involved overactivity of the 5-HT2A receptor.
Wow, it's like a whole toolkit
It is
of molecular wrenches
a whole toolkit of molecular wrenches.
that we can use to fine-tune brain activity.
It is, and this is where pharmacogenetics comes in.
Right, the idea that our genes can influence how we respond to these compounds.
Absolutely. So we're not all wired the same way.
Right.
And our genes play a big role in how our bodies process and respond to different substances, including psychedelics.
So it's not like everyone has the exact same version of the psychedelic receptor.
Exactly. So there can be subtle variations
Okay.
in the gene that codes for the 5-HT2A receptor.
Got it.
And those variations can influence a person's sensitivity to psychedelics.
So some people might need a higher dose
Exactly.
to get the same effect.
And some people might be more prone to intense experiences.
That makes sense.
It really highlights that there's no one-size-fits-all approach
Right.
to psychedelic therapy.
It's about personalized medicine.
It's about understanding an individual's unique genetic makeup
Right.
and tailoring the treatment accordingly.
So pharmacogenetics is really about personalizing his psychedelic therapy.
Absolutely. It holds the potential to make it safer and more effective for everyone.
Wow, it's like having a molecular map
Yeah.
that guides us toward the most effective and safe approach.
A personalized roadmap for each individual.
For each individual, yeah.
It's really incredible how science is opening up these new frontiers in personalized mental health care.
Speaking of new frontiers, I wanted to touch on something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately.
Okay.
Microdosing.
Ah, yes. Microdosing.
The practice of taking tiny doses of psychedelics,
Right.
often below the threshold
Below the threshold of noticeable effect.
of even feeling anything,
Yeah.
with the goal of enhancing creativity.
Creativity, focus, mood.
It seems like everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
But is there any scientific evidence to back it up?
The truth is, research on microdosing is still very limited,
Okay.
and most of the evidence is anecdotal.
So people are reporting feeling benefits.
Yeah, they are.
But we need more rigorous studies to really know for sure.
We need more research to understand if those benefits are real
Yeah.
and if there are any long-term risks.
Because even small doses of psychedelics could have unpredictable effects.
They can, and they can potentially interact with other medications.
Yeah.
Or exacerbate underlying mental health conditions.
That's a really good point. Just because something is natural doesn't mean it's safe.
Exactly.
Especially when we're talking about compounds that can influence brain chemistry.
Absolutely.
So while microdosing might seem appealing, it's important to approach it with caution.
It is.
Be aware of the risks.
And consult with a healthcare professional.
Absolutely. Talk to your doctor. Talk to someone who knows.
To make sure it's right for you.
Yeah. And I think this brings us back to the core message of this entire deep dive.
What's that?
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
The more we understand about these complex substances, the better equipped we'll be to use them safely.
And responsibly. It's been a real pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Likewise.
And our listeners, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have. From stability testing to these mind-blowing molecular interactions.
To the future of personalized medicine.
It's been an incredible journey.
It has.
And I feel like we've really learned a lot
Me too.
about the science behind these powerful compounds and the importance of approaching them with both curiosity and caution.
I agree. Well said.
Well, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, challenged your assumptions, and inspired you to learn more about this incredible world of plant-derived and fungal-derived compounds.
Thank you for joining us on this adventure of discovery. Until next time, keep those minds open.
Yes, keep those minds open.
And keep exploring.
And remember, knowledge is power, but responsibility is key.
Absolutely.